Hey guys, Coach Adam talking to you again today. And today I want to go into a bikini update, but an update of what's been happening recently in bikini world. Also going into some Olympia predictions and what's been going on lately with shows, who's qualified, who's still chasing the qualification. We're getting close to the end of the year and do things a little bit differently. Last year, I was going through and doing every single show with bikini reviews, but I think telling the story about what's going on in bikini keeps fans more interested in telling the actual stories of what's going on versus going into every show. Let me know what you think in the comments. It's hard to do every single bikini show too. There's 68 bikini shows, and some of them are not as interesting as others, to be honest. Some of them overseas, or some of them here just don't have any heavy hitters that draw any real attention to them. So I thought, what I'm gonna do is I'll go through a few shows today and see what's been happening recently, and let me know if you guys like this format. So with that being said, let's go ahead and jump right into it. Now, the first thing I wanted to go into was recently Issa winning 2 shows. So she won the Tampa Pro and won the Texas Pro. And there's been a lot of talk about Issa. So going into Issa's physique now, let's go ahead and take a deep dive into it. Now, here's the thing about Issa. And this is the thing that we've always known about Issa. We've been talking about it for years with Issa, is that from the front, honestly, since 2019, really, from the front, Issa's the best in the world, or one of the best in the world. And the reason is that she has this crazy small waistline. Her waistline is so small, there were times where judges were saying it's too extreme. That's how crazy her waistline is. It's so small that it's like borderline a problem for some judges, which is crazy. Imagine having your waistline being so small where the judges are like, hey, that's just a little too extreme. And that's just how she's built. So from the front, the shoulder width. Now she does have an X frame, and then we talk about the X frame versus an hourglass shape. But her overall flow from the front is just awesome. It's at worst, it's top 3 in the world. If you're really throwing, there's a lot of apples and oranges to be comparing there, but at worst, it's top 3 in the world. So what it comes down to with Issa is going to be her back pose. Okay, where does she line up in the back? And that's really where things change for her. So what we're really looking at with Issa nowadays is, okay, is she good enough from the back to move up to the people who are close to her? Does she have enough this year to hold Amy off for another year? Does she have enough to move up? Because that's always the issue. It's from the front. Yeah, she's right there. Number 3, number 2, even number 1. She's won the Olympia before. She's an Olympia champion. So is she number 1, number 2, number 3 from the front, and then from the back it's like, in the top 10 or in the first call out of the top 8, she's usually like 8th in the top 8. So that's the problem with Issa, is you're kind of combining the score of the front to the back. Number 1, 2, or 3 from the front, and then number 8 from the back if there's a first call out and there's 8 girls. So that's never going to be a recipe for winning the Olympia with today's standards. Now, the standard of when she won, it was different. They didn't have these deep tie-ins. They didn't have this full definition needed in the tie-in and these round full glutes as round and as full as they are now. So that's what things have changed for Issa. And now this year we're seeing her and like, hey, she's a lot closer this year than she's ever been. And so that's the good thing. We're seeing, okay, now is it enough to pass everyone up to actually, she doesn't need to be first from the back. I think a lot of times people think, oh, she needs to be first from the back to win the Olympia. She doesn't need to be first from the back. She's already 1, 2, or 3 from the front. Her posing routine's awesome. Probably top 3, 4 in the posing routine, just on that alone. Stage presence, she's right up there. But from the back, she doesn't need to be number 1. She could probably be number 4 and still win the Olympia from the back. So that's the thing. You got to average the 2 scores when it comes to Issa, and everything else with Issa, her flow, her beauty, her skin tone, her structure, all of that is there. That's all in the top, right? So it just comes down to, okay, is this enough now to have her get to that top 5 in the glutes, top 4 in the glutes? 3 is a stretch, right? Top 3 is a stretch. That would probably win her the Olympia if she got to like the number 3 in the glutes from the back. I don't see that happening. So is it enough? So let's go ahead and compare. And I think that's where everything goes. And congrats to Issa on getting that, winning 2 shows. She won, as I said, Tampa, and then she won Texas recently. And Tyler said it's the best that he's seen her. So let's go ahead and compare now Issa to some of her competition that she's going to run into. And what I pulled up here, I pulled up Jennifer Dory, who's the current champion, and I pulled up Issa, and I pulled up Amy. Amy was 1 spot below Issa last year. So the main question, and I think this is the question that a lot of people are going to be asking, is how good is Issa now, right? Tyler said it's best she's been, right? So, but the best she's been is it the best she's been ever, and now that's good enough to win the Olympia, or is it just better than when she was in 2019 and she won the Olympia, right? So she's clearly better than 2019 when she won the Olympia, but the division has changed. It's been 5 years, at this year's Olympia since she won, and with that, the development on the glutes and the tie-ins really did take a leap forward when Janet won the Olympia in 2020. You could see she's got that full tie-in there, and so that kind of made things okay. Now we need a little bit of tie-ins. When Ronnie Coleman won the Olympia and he had strided glutes, that kind of changed the game. It was like, okay, well now we need strided glutes, right? So it's these things evolve. They do make advancements, and in 5 years you would expect to see some. And now looking at Issa, here's where she runs into the problem. Look at Amy's fullness and her roundness of her hamstring. So the roundness and fullness. So you see that's the thing that people don't understand, is that when you have a really round, really full hamstring, you will have less separation and detail. See how round that hamstring is? And it's called the bicep femoris, but it actually looks like a little bicep on Amy. There's like a little roundness to it, right? If you look at Jennifer, hers aren't super round in full. To be honest, I think in the hamstrings, Amy's actually the better out of these three in the hamstrings. In the hamstrings, Amy's got the roundest without the separation detail, right? Now, if you have a little bit of a thinner hamstring or a little bit less developed hamstring, you'll start getting the hamstrings to really see the separation lines in detail. See how deep this separation line is here and how that deep detail is? So because of that, she does get beat from the back. And you're seeing, because she has a little bit less development on her hamstring, you're seeing all this detail and separation. Like, that's a lot of detail and separation for the next level. Now, for the Tampa and the Texas, no problem at all. But when you look here, there's a separation line there. There's a tendon there. There's a tendon there. I can see all of the detail, right? Tendon there, tendon here, a separation of the quad there. That's a lot of detail, Look at Jennifer, the current champion. Find one separation detail line where it's like fully separated, right? You get a little bit down here on the lower hamstring. Both sides, that's about it. Look at Amy. You get a tiny bit right here. Everyone has that one where it connects to the knee. What else, right? So that's the problem that she has to fill out still. So she still has to fill out the roundness of her hamstrings a little bit, and a little bit more roundness and density to her glutes. Has she done enough this year to hold off Amy and to keep Amy back one spot behind her? I don't know. Honestly, the way that Amy's been going, I kind of see that flip-flopping, if I'm just giving my honest opinion. And I love Issa. Of course, I want the Vegas girl to always do well. I want number 1, 2, and 3 all to be from Vegas. I would love that so much. But the reality is that Amy's made a lot of improvements. She's brought her legs down quite a bit this year. But if you look at her from the back and you look at Amy from the back and look at Jennifer from the back, who's closer to Jennifer, Issa or Amy from the back? I would say pretty clearly Amy's closer to Jennifer from the back. I mean, it's pretty obvious. I think an untrained eye can see that. I don't think that that's a leap by any means. So the question is, okay, is Issa good enough from the front to hold off Amy from the back? And is she good enough from the front to not let her pass her this year type of thing? That's a tough one. That is really tough. Yeah, Issa's better than probably everyone from the front, but how much better? Amy, last year at the Arnold, Tyler was saying that Amy's shoulders were a little bit too developed, a little bit too big in the shoulders, but she brought them down. She brought her quads down. Everything flows a lot better now. So has she changed her posing? I don't know. I kind of see Amy moving up. I see her moving up one spot, even though the East is better. But that's going to be a real throwdown come Olympia time. Those two are going to be a real throwdown, and who knows where it's going to end up. So this is a little bit of foreshadowing here. Remember me talking about this, because that's going to be a big one there. And I don't know which way it's going to go, honestly. If I'm looking at the back, it's Amy all day. You compare the both, it's tough. All right, so going on to the next story that we have going on. There's a lot of stories as of recently. So one of them, the next one when we go into, is going to be Ariana, right? Ariana, this is why it's kind of a bigger deal with Ariana. So Ariana, remember, I have the Olympia placings of last year. Now that we're talking about the Olympia, let's go ahead and jump into the Olympia stuff, right? So last year, Ariana was one spot behind Amy, right? One spot behind Amy. I thought it was relevant because we're talking about Amy now. One spot behind Amy, 2 spots behind Issa, but she did the Tampa. I'm sorry, yeah, she did the Tampa this year and ended up with a 5th place spot. Now, when you have a 5th place spot at the Tampa, that's great if it's Jennifer, Maureen, Ashley, Laura Lee, and then you're 5th, right? That's great, but it wasn't Jennifer, Maureen, Ashley, Laura Lee. It was Issa. That was the only higher ranked competitor than Ariana going into that show. And then she ended up in 5th place, right? So she fell behind Ivana, who wasn't even in the top 15 last year, right? So it's kind of like, okay, what is going on with Ariana? Why is she not doing well this year? And that happened earlier this year too, where she really had a bad placing. And it's like, man, she's one of my favorite physiques, one of everyone's favorite physiques, beautiful flow, a ton of potential. What's going on with Amy, right? So we look at Amy, and clearly, there's a couple things changed from this year to last year. She had surgery. She had breast implant surgery. You could see that. And so is that the reasoning why she is, not placing as well this year? Because she's less full. I definitely think it's a contributing factor. That's definitely a contributing factor. You got to take time off when you have a surgery. She's less full this year. I don't know what other reasons there would be. But there's a lot of times that this happens. And I think that, let's go ahead and look, and I'm going to go ahead and show a more clear picture. But from the front, while we go into what the main things are, from the front, when you look at her in the upper body, there's really not much of a difference on the upper body. The upper body looks pretty solid from the front. Even her conditioning, it looks pretty similar. She's actually probably looks a tiny bit leaner in her core on this Tampa. Now, different pictures, different scenarios. I want to give her an honest shot at that. But when you look at the front glute profile and you look at the roundness and you look at the density and you look at the overall fullness to those glutes, and she also does have a pretty thin quad, like a little bit too thin of a quad, I will say, even at the Olympia. Her shape carried her, but her quad was pretty thin down low. You look like by her knee down in this area. That's a pretty thin quad. So she does need more overall development there, even last year. But this year, it's even a little bit thinner. But this is the main thing, the glutes. And when we go to the back, you can really see the difference between her of last year and this year. And this is the glute difference that we're running into here on the fullness and the roundness of the glute. I mean, you could see a pretty big difference. Even on her backside, so she used to have it looked very hourglass. Like the shape looked very hourglass. You see the hips really pop out and create a beautiful shape for her. The roundness and hardness to her hamstrings without any separation and details there. Great tie-ins without full etch tie-ins. I mean, spot on, right? Now you look at her this year and, the roundness and fullness of the hamstrings, not really there. The hourglass shape seems to have diminished by about an inch or so. When you look at the hourglass shape, she looks a little bit more kind of straight up and down on the backside versus that hourglass shape that we want to see in bikini. And then you look at the glutes, and there's a clear difference in the density and the fullness. And this happens from, for many reasons. A lot of times, and this is the thing, and I always want to be fair to everyone, because this happens. This just happens. Someone has a surgery. Maybe they lost some intensity in their workouts. Maybe they gained too much body fat in the off season and they had to diet it off come showtime. A lot of times people just go right to, it's the coach. This is a hard one to say that. I don't know the scenario, so I'm not going to give my opinion on that. But it's a hard one to say it is, because losing muscle is kind of hard to do. You generally need a lot of factors to do that. You need, to be in a calorie deficit for a really long time. You need to lose intensity in the gym. In the scenario of this year, it kind of makes sense where, hey, she had surgery. I don't know how much weight she gained after the surgery. I don't know how intense her workouts were in the gym, but there's clearly some muscle that's been lost. And so where it came from, I don't know. I think there's always like a lot of, in the news, there's always like, it must have been the coach, must have been this, because she did switch coaches after this last show. But there's always got to look at both sides. You always got to look, okay, what did you do to lose the muscle? Why did it take so long to realize you lost the muscle? How much muscle did you lose after surgery? How much weight did you gain after that? And how much weight did you have to lose? How much fat did you have to lose for this prep? An extreme prep will sometimes cause not necessarily a lot of like muscle loss, but the ability to like load your muscles at the end. So it's hard to get your muscles to fill out 100% when you're over dieted, over cardioed for a long period of time. So it could have been that, could have been coaching on that. She could be flat. Maybe she wasn't having enough water, things like that. I don't think that was the case. I actually know that wasn't the case for sure. So I want to give everyone a fair shake here. A lot of times it goes on someone gets the blame for it, but there's always what really happened here. All I know now is that she was clearly not as good as she was at last year's Olympia. She's lost some muscle fullness, some muscle density, and she recently switched coaches. That is all the details I have. But a lot of times you see all these stories going around, oh, this guy dieted her too hard, or oh, whatever. It's like, really? Did that really happen? Because these things have happened to me too. You know, it happens to everyone eventually. Something happens. Someone loses motivation. Someone eats, you know, I know Ariana well enough to know she didn't eat like crazy in the offseason or anything like that. Someone has to lose 40 pounds for the Olympia and can't hit their conditioning. You know, there's things happen, and then the coach is kind of left with, okay, all we can do is diet because we have to get you ready, and now you're not as good, and then everyone kind of gets the blame of him. So I don't know the scenario there, but what I do know is that she switched coaches recently. She is a ton of potential. I don't know this year's Olympia chances for her. We have 9 weeks to the Olympia, guys, and this is where she's at. I don't even see this physique being top 15 right now, but there's a big difference. We have 9 weeks. To gain muscle back, it doesn't take that long. As long as you're not like dieting into shows the whole time, it doesn't take that long. So it is very possible that we can see this Ariana at the Olympia. It's very possible. It is difficult to do. It's difficult to do in a 9 week period of time, but it's not impossible to do. Gaining muscle back that you lost is much easier than gaining muscle. Two completely different things. Muscle memory, and it's not as simple as saying muscle memory, but it basically, when you develop a muscle a certain amount, you develop a certain amount of nuclei. That makes it easier to gain that muscle back in the future. Your body they say muscle memory, and that sounds like it's deceiving because it sounds like, oh, your muscle has a brain and it just remembers. It's not really that simple, but it kind of is. Like, it's in its simplest form, and the most dumbed down way I can explain it, it kind of is. Muscle memory is a real thing. So with that being said, will we see that from her? I don't know. 9 weeks is a tough time. Her conditioning is already there, so we don't need some crazy, have to diet into the show and gain muscle. She just needs to gain muscle and maintain. That's much easier to do. So will we see this Ariana? I don't know, but I hope we do. One of my favorite physiques, I think Ariana actually has Olympia champion genetics. I think she has Olympia champion structure, not just top 10 at the Olympia, but actually winning the Olympia quality physique. So moving on to the next story here is going to be Ivana. So Ivana is a story in here because I think people forget how good Ivana is. Ivana, or Evie, I call her Ivanita. Ivanita. So she was number 13 in the world. So she was as high as top 15 in the world. She is very, very good competitor. Last year she fell out of the top 15. But she's a very good competitor, and people kind of forget how good she is. Now, here's the advantage and disadvantage to Evie. She has to come in super shredded. They like her lean. They always liked her really lean. She does very good when she's lean. She wins shows when she's very lean. Some competitors, they just like leaner. Certain physiques look better leaner. Certain physiques look better softer. You look at Jennifer Dory versus Ivana, and you look at the difference of conditioning, and it's like they're not even in the same division if you looked at just the conditioning. But the overall, so they do like her leaner. Now, the problem when she's leaner is that she will have this deep detail on her hamstrings. Her detail is really, it's quite a bit. It's pretty extreme in those hamstrings. You're seeing the separation lines. But you got to remember, that's how they like her, right? So it's different for different physiques. They like her lean. They like her hard. She always does way better when she's harder. So with that being said, is this enough to get her into the top 15 again? And also the top 10. Now you got to remember, the top 10 is going to have some missing holes from last year. You have a couple people that were placing above her that are not even in the Olympia this year. So that's the thing. So just by default, there's 2 spots higher for everyone past 10th place. Yeah, so for everyone, so the 13th place or 12th place person would actually be number 10 if everything stayed exactly the same this year. There's two people are gone. So there's definitely room for her if she was like on the 16th place for her to move up just by that. But her physique, I do think, is improved enough to get into the top 10 this year. I think it's actually possible for her to get in the top 10, which would be her best showing ever. So, and I would love to see that. She's always had one of my favorite physiques. It is very lean. It is very athletic physique. I do like athletic physiques, but this one does push the limits. That's just how they like her. And as you can tell, she did very good at the show at Tampa, and she finished second place next to Issa, which in the best case scenario, probably not going to beat Issa, not with how good Issa is and dominant Issa is from the front, especially when the back is kind of comparable. So congratulations to Evie, and I'm expecting to see, hopefully we'll see her again before this year is over. Now, going back into the Olympia now, talking about Evie getting the Olympia, look at who is still not qualified for the Olympia. So this is the list here, this side, who still needs to qualify. We have some crazy quality people in this list here. Now, the people in red are people who are not going to be doing the Olympia this year. They're not competing anymore right now. I don't know how many of these others are not competing anymore, but look at the names that are still here. I don't know what's going on with Jourdain right now, but definitely a top hitter. Top 10 Olympian at one point. Was it even last year she was top 10? I might have been top 10 last year, actually. And then I think maybe she was 9th last year or 10th. Yeah, I think so. Now, look at the names. So Alessia Facine, Ellie Fernandez. Now, Ellie Fernandez, I don't know what's going on with Ellie Fernandez, but she's from Mexico, and the Mexico Pro is still left on the list. You have Yulia, who won 2 shows, I think 2 shows last year, off the top of my head. Still not in the Olympia yet. Lexi Redmond, Nade, Romina. Are we going to see Romina this year? I've been seeing video of her lately. She's been looking pretty damn good. Looks like she could jump into a show, and she has in the past. She is known for jumping into shows really late in the year, doing one show. I think she did one a couple weeks before the cutoff and was like, this is the first show I'm going to do. And then does it, wins it, gets the Olympia, super confident. That is pretty intense to I'll do 1 or 2 shows. And if I get in, I'll get in. Can you imagine that level of confidence? I'll do 1 or 2 shows and I'm getting into the Olympia, and she does it. So these shows are definitely still up for grabs. And look at all of these names: Sierra, Savannah, Eureka, Romina, Nade, Lexi. And one of the names that I do want to go into too is Tamikia, right? Tamikia is not in the Olympia yet. Which is surprising because she's a really good competitor. So I was a little surprised that she's not there yet. She's competed a few times and she's just not gotten there yet. She's gotten a 2nd, she's gotten a 3rd, she's gotten a 4th. So what's the difference with Tamikia in these different positions? So I saw her earlier this year, and I will say too, with Tamikia, she, in her pictures, in all her pictures and everything, I thought she was much bigger than she actually was. I never saw her in person besides the Olympia, and there's so much going on at the Olympia. It's hard to really grasp how you can't take everyone in. It's just too many people. There's 70 people there. There's 60 people there at the bikini. So it's hard. But in her pictures and her videos, she always looks crazy jacked. And then I saw her in person. I was like, oh, she's really not as big as I thought she was. She has really bubbly muscle, but she's pretty petite. She's a pretty petite competitor. So just want to clarify that, because I have said in a video before, I thought her quads were really developed, and then she was moving them too much in the walk, which I do think she does move them a little too much in the walk still, but they're not nearly as big. So it's not as big of a problem as I thought it was. I probably wouldn't change anything because they're smaller muscles, so it's fine if they have a little bit more flexing to them. Now, the first time I saw her this year at Patriots, she was just crazy hard shredded. She was grainy shredded. So if you look at her legs in this picture here and you zoom in, you'll see the feathering of the muscle. So not just the leanness and separation of the muscle, the vertical separation, but the horizontal feathering of the muscle you were seeing in the quads. That is way too lean for bikini. So this picture with this background here is the Patriots show. So if you look at her tie-ins and how deep they are, those tie-ins are really deep. If you look at her hamstrings, now these pictures, so this is at the Alexis Park in Las Vegas. It is notorious for being very soft lighting. A lot of times people will look really soft in that lighting because it's just too lit of a room. The room's really, really lit. There's lights everywhere. It bounces off everything. The walls are light. And so it creates a lot of light, and everyone looks softer in the pictures at that show. She looks hard in the pictures at that show, and if you saw her in person, you would actually see the full hamstring separation lines in those hamstrings. Then she went to the Texas Pro, and I was like, whoa, totally different. She filled out, she softened up a little bit. She is round and full and has that perfect bikini conditioning now. I think she was a little hard earlier this year, but the conditioning now is spot on. I saw it. I was like, wow, if she was competing against like almost anyone else, she would win that show, no problem. But she was competing against Issa. Her only problem was who she was competing against that day. That was literally the only problem. Just who showed up. That was the problem. Nothing else. There was no problems here. Go to the next show, win the next show. And I do think that is going to be very possible for her because she is competing this weekend in Nashville. And I think that she is the clear favorite going into this. If she can bring this level of conditioning to Nashville, I think it's lights out. I don't think anyone beats her. I think honestly, it's probably like perfect score lights out. This is an incredible physique. If she can bring this level of fullness with her fluid posing routine, she's got a great posing routine. This level of fullness, this level of conditioning, nothing more than this. This is it. This is the look for her. So I'm guessing in a couple weeks you'll see a video of me and saying that, hey, she's in the Olympia now. I don't see any way she won't get to the Olympia if she keeps competing. I honestly think it's going to happen this weekend. So we'll see. Wishing her nothing but luck and nothing but the best here. Now, another story we got into is going to be Jessica. So Jessica, the current Miss Bikini Masters Olympia. How do I say that? The current Masters Miss Bikini. I think it's the current Masters Miss Bikini Olympia. She's the first ever, so we have to come up with a name. So I guess it's Masters Miss Bikini Olympia. Jessica can title it. Is it Miss Masters Bikini Olympia? Jessica, it's up to you. You can put it, let me know. You put it in the comments. What do you want to be called? She's the first one. Let her name it, right? So with Jessica, so she got to the Olympia. She got third in Chicago. And then she got to the Olympia at the Tahoe show. Now, what does Jessica need to do to get into the top 15? So Jessica, I love her physique. She has great, and one thing I'll also say, let me go into this too, because the pictures at the Tahoe show, unfortunately, they didn't get a back shot of the competitor. If you go to NPC News Online, which is where I got all these pictures, thank you, NPC News, for always doing a great job. J.M. Mannion, most of these pictures. Not these pictures, though, not at Tahoe, because J.M. Mannion would have gotten a back shot. Unfortunately, the photographer there didn't get a back shot. Literally, the two things you have to get for every bikini competitor is a front shot set and a back shot. That's it. Everything else is just extra, right? Didn't get the back shot. So I'm using the Chicago Pro pictures and the Olympia Masters pictures for Jessica because there is no full back shot in her pose, which is crazy, right? So it is what it is. So photographer, hey, watch this video, do a front and a back shot the next time. It's really all you need. Now, with that being said, what does she need to do to get a higher placing at the Olympia? Well, the main thing with Jessica is she's got really round, really full hamstrings. I love the round. Look at her hamstrings. When I talk about the roundness and fullness of the hamstrings without detail, this is what I'm talking about, guys. You know, Amy has it, Jessica has it, Jennifer has it. You know, those are the things that we're wanting to see. Look at, you see that you don't see any adductor with Jessica. You see that there's no like deep V. So some of these girls, I'll use a black pen here. Some of these girls will have like a deep V like this in their adductor, and you'll see that deep V. You do not see that with Jessica. You're always going to have little signs of it because it's impossible not to have some signs of it. You could see here, you could see where it is technically at that show, but you're not seeing a deep V. Sandy, Tyler, Etila, they don't want to see a deep V. If they see a deep V, they're like, hey, it's too much. That's it. If you're at this level and you're getting deep Vs on those adductors, they're going to be like, sorry, guys, it's just too much. We want round fullness without deep detail in the hamstring. We want to see tie-ins without the deep detail of that adductor here where that deep V is. We want to see deep hamstring tie-ins without them being etched hamstring tie-ins. We want a full tie-in, but not a etched tie-in, or maybe not even a full tie-in, just signs of a full tie-in, right? So like this would be called signs of a full tie-in, where you could see the bottom, but it's not full in yet. That would be signs. Now, where Jessica falls short is the upper glute fullness and density. It needs a little bit more roundness, a little bit more fullness to be really competitive at the open Olympia level, and also in the front pose needs a little bit more of that roundness and fullness in that front pose too. Everywhere else, pretty darn solid. I mean, she should be. She's the Masters Miss Olympia, right? I think for her, a little bit more on the shoulder, just that tiniest bit on the glutes, and it's game over. She's in the top 10, no problem. And, you know, who knows? Maybe she has enough time to do that. We are currently 9 weeks out from the Olympia, so things are getting a little bit crazy with the Olympia now. And that's, you know, basically it. So did I miss any stories? Let me know. Hopefully you guys like this format better. I like this format better. I think it tells the story a little bit more, what's going on versus going into every show. And this is, I'll still make sure to recognize the names that are coming up and whatnot and keep an eye on things. But I like it. You know, it's really hard to do those other ones too. So, and always doing every single show. So you guys let me know if you like this format better. Probably what I'm going to go with either way, honestly. But thank you guys so much for tuning in. I hope you learned something. Leave it in the comments below. Who am I missing? Did I miss a show? Did I miss someone? As always, teamelitephysique.com for worldwide online contest prep with me. And I'll talk to you guys later.